When you think value for money, a 6-cylinder 340 horsepower BMW probably isn't the first thing that comes to mind, is it? Well, oddly enough, the art of depreciation has potentially created one of the best deals I've seen in a while. Let's have a look around this 2017 BMW 540i. My name's Tom, and you're watching Paragon Cars. Let's go. That's right, there's money to be saved in buying a big old BMW barge. Oh god, that sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud. But just hear me out for a sec. This car, as it sits, is listed for just under £24,000. And if you look for a similar aged and mileage BMW M140i, you're looking for around £20,000. So for an extra £4,000, you get the same engine and gearbox, a whole lot more tech, like seriously, this thing even has a Bowers & Wilkins sound system, and X-Drive all-wheel drive, a system that you can't get on the M140i in the UK. Well, unless you fit it yourself, of course. I'll get on to the rest of the cool stuff it has in a minute, but first, more about the running gear. Being a 540i, you have the glorious B58 inline 6. It has 340 horsepower and 450 newton meters of torque. Why is it glorious though, you ask? Well, not only is it shockingly reliable, especially for a BMW, it can quite happily be tuned to over 400 horsepower with a few bolt-on mods and an email. In its stock form though, it's still a buttery smooth, torque-filled inline 6 engine. I suppose we should see how well it can do the 30 to 70 sprint. Let's find out. So we managed 4.35 seconds. That's faster than a Mercedes A35 AMG and only 0.15 of a second off of an Audi S3. Impressive figures when you consider this thing weighs around 1.7 tons as well. Compared to the M140i, of course, it's slower by about half a second, but that's to be expected when you're carrying an extra queso around with you. I wonder how many people got that one. Now then, the all-important interior. What does an extra £4,000 get you? Well, for starters, you obviously get heaps more room in the front and in the rear of the car. You also get adaptive cruise, the display key, not that it's all that useful, and the eardrum-shattering Bowers & Wilkins sound system. Seriously, this system, be good. Unfortunately, where this 5 Series falls a bit short though is in its boot. And that's for one reason and one alone. You can't fold the rear seats down. Yeah, knowing BMW, it's an optional extra. Oof. At least the space that is there is still pretty large, but if you want a new TV, you might have to think of home delivery. Anyway, let's get barging, shall we? Ooh, so firstly, I'm a bit of an audiophile, and that's quite a dangerous word if you say it wrong, but yes, I am one. And this Bowers & Wilkins sound system is chef's kiss. It is awesome. Definitely worth the money over the Harman Kardon system, and definitely worth the money over the standard system. The Harman Kardon system is good, it's fine, but if you really want the best out of your sound system, this is the one to go for. And if you want the best out of the suspension as well, you're gonna want to go for the dynamic ride in this thing. Because, again, it is just so much better than the standard suspension. I mean, it's like driving over a cloud. In comfort mode, you hit speed bumps and they're almost imperceivable. And that's aided, actually, by the fact you've got acoustic glass and an acoustic roof liner. You might not think the roof would aid sound coming into the cabin, but it stops sound from reverberating. And that's the most important thing when you have empty space in a car. But yeah, to drive, this thing is just lovely. I mean, it's just a big barge, isn't it, really? So there's very little to complain about. And yeah, the thing is, it's got a lot of optional extras, but it's now depreciated, right? So you can buy it for mid £20,000, which is a bit of a steal when I think about it, because I bought my BMW M140i with admittedly 20,000 less miles on it for a similar price as this is listed on the Paragon Cars website now. By the way, if you want to check out the car, I'll put a link down in the description. If it's not there, then the car is sold. Sorry you missed it. But anyway, parking this thing it's okay. So I'd say the Audi A6 is a little bit easier to park, as it's just a bit more of a boxy shape. But as BMWs go, this is actually quite good. This has the full sort of reverse camera system with lines telling you where you're going to go. So if you change your steering angle, you know where the car's going to end up. And it is really good, actually. This iDrive system is fantastic. Parking sensors really accurate, and one thing I really love actually are these little graphics showing you just how close you are to objects, because A, they work, and B, at night especially, it has actually saved me on the odd occasion where there's been like a black bollard that you can't necessarily see, and then it still comes up with like one of these rectangles and you go, there's something there. So it always stops you from crashing into stuff, which is nice. Oh, I forgot. Then opening your door when you're in a space, yeah, you can see we're quite close to the white line. So sometimes you can't get to the first notch, which is a bit of a shame, but it's kind of worth it because, you know, it's a bit more insulated, a bit more comfortable than the BMW 3 Series. We'll see how much less sporty it is later. But for now, let's have a taste of this xDrive system and see how this thing does out of a junction. Right, just give it half throttle. And it's wet today. Whoa, my lord. B58 ZF8 speed gearbox and xDrive is a combination made in heaven. It is a lovely thing. And it just, you know, the engine's not trying hard, the gearbox blends the gears together, and the xDrive system just works. It feels rear wheel drive, but is always there to sort of just get you going if you need it. Right, let's reset our trip computer. Now, according to BMW, this thing on the combined cycle will do 40 miles per gallon. But the problem is, although the B58 is a very efficient engine, it's not so good when you start adding quite a bit of weight. Now, we're not talking BMW X5 kind of weight, or X7 even, but we are talking 5 Series, which, you know, we're talking about 1.7 tons, which is quite a hefty machine. So hopefully we can get mid-30s at least. If we do see 40 mpg though, I'll be very impressed. And for me at least, that's kind of one of its shortcomings, because the BMW 530D we reviewed, if you want to go and see that, I'll put a link up in the top right hand corner, was very quick, also had xDrive, also very responsive, also very comfortable, and it did 70 miles per gallon, which is pretty much unheard of in that segment of cars. So if you're doing a lot of motorway miles, this might not be the car for you, but if you're driving around town, or you just want something that's the petrol equivalent of the 530 or 40 or 50D, this is a really nice car to have. The way it drives as well, I would say, is probably about the same as the 530, just because the B58 has so much low down torque. Like if I just, no, I can't, I'm already at 30. If I slow down a bit and then just tickle the throttle, yeah, it just kind of glides up to speed, which is nice. Right, as usual, before we get on the motorway, let's take this thing round a roundabout and have a little bit of fun. Okay then, let's go sports mode. We'll just go into Sports Plus, that's what we want. This will firm up the suspension because again we have those adaptive dampers. Let's turn the traction control off, get the gearbox into Sports as well. And I'm not going to go for manual yet, I'm just going to leave it in Sports and see what it does. But yeah, it drops a couple of gears, also tells you what gear you're in, and makes the gear shifts a little bit more aggressive. We also have dynamic steering, so it's just a little bit heavier. But yeah, this thing being xDrive is very quick, and it does just kind of put the power down really. Get a nice amount of noise from that B58 engine, although I have to say a lot of it is kind of pumped in. But yeah, it's just got so much grunt, this thing. I'll say it again, even though I say it all the time, the B58 really is one of the best engines out there at the minute. Nothing in this kind of mid-range segment comes close when it comes to Mercedes or Audi. This engine is just amazing. Right, into Eco. See what this thing is like on the motorway. Get the traction back on as well. But yeah, supposed to do 40 mpg. But the thing is, if you're buying a car like this, you don't necessarily care too much about your MPG, as long as it's not abysmal. You kind of care more about how far you can go without having to fill up. This is where the B58 really comes into its own. So you can see we're in Eco now, coming onto the motorway, and you literally just tickle the throttle and you glide up to your desired speed. It is just a wonderful engine. This car is also equipped with adaptive cruise control, which is a really rare option actually. Haven't found many cars that seem to have it. But the BMW system, I would say it's pretty much like the Audi system. You just press your button, whack your cruise control on. There we go, it's on now. Set it to 70 miles an hour in your heads-up display, and that's about it. You can also turn lane assist on as well, and then it comes up with a little steering wheel in the heads-up display. I don't know if you can actually see that, maybe if I slouch down a bit. But then it'll steer for me as well, so if I just hold my fingers here, you'll see we're kind of on a little bit of a bend now. But yeah, it just keeps you in lane, and then shouts at you because it thinks you're not holding the steering wheel. But yeah, overall a pretty nice system, I think. Obviously you can change your following distance as well. Most of the time in the UK you're going to leave it on the minimum setting. That's just because if you don't and you're in the passing lane, people will undertake you because they think you're leaving too much space, which is ironic considering you're leaving a safe amount of space. But yeah, anyway, this thing on the motorway, absolutely awesome, absolutely sublime. Very little road noise, very little wind noise, and the seats very comfortable. Seating position as well is really nice. BMW always seems to get that right. It's just a great car to munch miles in, so comfortable. And with that air suspension, it's just even better. I mean, it's just so soft. I mean, it's 90% as good as a Mercedes S-Class, I'd say. The only thing that the S-Class does slightly better is ironing out the little harsher bumps. But this is very good at the bigger kind of undulations. It just keeps the body nice and flat, and you just don't really feel anything. Very, very comfortable car. Oh dear, we've got a lot of water. Crikey. Yes, if you hadn't noticed, it's raining today. As it is pretty much every day in the UK. By the way, if you can see a little crack in the windscreen and a couple of marks on the wheels in the intro, it's just because this car hasn't been prepped for sale yet, so don't worry, all that stuff's getting sorted. But yeah, I think it's about time we get on the motorway and see what kind of MPG figure we can actually manage. So yeah, as you can see, we sat in traffic for most of that, which is a bit pants. And yeah, we managed 34.5 mpg, which fundamentally for a big petrol-powered, relatively high-power car is not bad. However, the 530D, which is not far off this in terms of speed, does literally double the mpg. So yeah, if you do a lot of motorway miles, I will just say go for that engine. But if you mainly do town miles and then the occasional road trip like I do, then something like this is the pick that I'd go for, I think. Anyway, one good thing about petrol is that it has an actual exhaust note as standard. So let's go and see how this thing sounds and how this thing drives on a B road now. Lego. Alright then, back in Sports Plus. Got the traction in Sports as well. I'm going to go for a manual gearbox this time, just because the ZF8 speed transmission is a lovely thing. We're going to see how this 5 Series handles. We're going to see how it differs from the Estate, actually. If you're going to go and see that review, I'll put a link up in the top right hand corner. But for now, I think we should potentially give it some. Okay, so steering, not its strong suit, but engine, mighty. Look at that. I mean, yeah, the 30 to 70 times spoke for itself, right? It's a quick car. And just think, it's the B58. The tuning potential of this thing is mind-boggling. Yeah. Absolutely crazy car. People that take these up to stage 3 power, you're looking at basically keeping up with the BMW M5 competition, which is just nuts, really, when you think about it. You save quite a bit of money. And the thing is, it's still reliable. Right, let's do a little sound check through this tunnel. So yeah, it does sound good, but there are a lot of filters and things going on in the exhaust that silence the sound, because at the end of the day, this is supposed to be a big comfy barge. It's not even really a proper M Sport car. So you're going to have to mod the exhaust to get a bit of sound out of it, but when you do, it does sound nice. Handling wise though, yeah, it's just a very neutral chassis. Typical BMW really. It's just really pleasant. You feel exactly what the car is doing underneath your bum, and even though this is a bit heavier than the BMW 3 Series, it masks its weight very well. And I think because we've got the adaptive air suspension on this, it firms up the dampers enough that it controls its body really well. Actually, it doesn't roll too much in the corners. But yeah, obviously give it a little bit of gas and you can get the back end to kind of start scrolling around a bit. Ooh, my lord, third gear is good in this. Oh. But the good thing about this as well, so if I go into 6th gear, so 1500 RPM, that's where we get the full 450 Newton meters. Just plant my foot, you can see it just builds. But it's effortless at the same time. It doesn't sound like the engine's trying, and I mean, really, it's not. Tuning potential will tell you all you need to know about the potential of this engine. But yeah, more about the suspension actually. So is it worth going for the adaptive dampers? I would absolutely say yes, purely because if you either go for M Sport suspension or just the Sport suspension, they're not, they don't really do either thing quite well enough. The comfort is kind of okay, and then they don't really do the sporty thing that well either. So you kind of left it this like weird in-between bit between good suspension and bad suspension. Whereas this, yeah, absolutely worth every penny, I must say. Obviously maintenance fees are going to be a little bit higher, but I think it's still worth it. It's just like the Bowers and Wilkins system. It's like expensive, but it's a second-hand car now, so most of the depreciations come out of it. So you don't really have to worry too much. Brakes, M Sport brakes, again, feel not amazing, but it gets the job done at the end of the day. Give it a little tickle. We are running on all-season tyres, by the way, so I can't go too crazy. Otherwise, I'll end up shredding them. But yeah, no, I just love BMWs because they're so predictable. And I know we do a lot of reviews on them, but there's a reason for that. At the end of the day, we're a dealership and we sell these cars. And the reason we're selling these is because they're good cars. Fundamentally, BMW are making absolutely awesome stuff at the minute. They're absolutely cooking. And yeah, they're just really, really on fire, making some really good cars. But yeah, their 6-cylinder engines are just awesome. I can't think of really any other brand out there that makes better engines at the minute. The days of BMWs being unreliable are pretty much over, really. At least mechanically. Electronically, they do have a bit of a ways to go still. Oh, but what a lovely thing this is. And the thing is, that air suspension gives you the best of both worlds. You've got perfect comfort, like as I said before, 90% as good as a Mercedes S-Class, but you've also got a sporty edge to a point where it's not quite like obviously M5 stiff, but it's stiff enough that it controls its mass. We're going to really put it to the test now though, because we're going to take this thing down a B road and see how it handles that. Right, let's see how this big barge can handle a small and potholed British B road. Oh god, this engine is just crazy, man. So much power. Steering, I mean, you know what the car's doing, right? But it just doesn't have all that much feel. Air suspension, wow, yeah, okay. It deals with the bumps really well, actually. And coming around here, tuck it in. Yeah, the tyres don't have too much grip. I think even in the wet, summer tyres would be a little bit better than this. Okay, can we hit 60 before the corner? Let's go! Yeah, of course we can. Right, tuck it in over here. Bit of a beast, this thing. Alright, we are going to have to slow down now because there's very deep puddles. Over this bump. Yeah, air suspension does its job really well, actually. Keeps you in contact with the ground very well, I must say. And yeah, you know what the car's doing. I think I'd just have a bit more feel if we were on some summer tyres. Foot down. Yeah, do you know what? The more time I spend in this, the better the steering is getting, or at least the more intuitive it's getting. It could definitely be better though. It's just such a weapon. It's so understated yet so fast and capable. Yeah. Definitely has a bit of a better balance than the estate car does. It just feels a bit more nimble on the rear end. But you can't fold the seats down, so... Would I go for the estate still? It's a hard one, really. I think for me personally, do you know what? Even though I do generally prefer estate cars, I don't think I would. Because I very rarely need a big boot. And yeah, I just think I'd go for the Saloon. I think it handles a bit better. Yeah, I think it does. And I think the estate is, you know, it's quite heavy and you can feel the weight on it. But this spec, I think for me personally, I'd go with the cognac leather, which is like a brown leather interior. Not everyone likes that though. But I do quite like it. And I'd definitely go for the B&W sound, or the Bowers & Wilkins sound, and also the adaptive dampers, because that air suspension and the sound system are actually well worth the money, especially when you consider it's now a used car and most of the depreciation has come out of it, so you're not really paying that much more for these optional extras. The only thing I wouldn't really bother with is this display key. I think it is a bit of a gimmick, but yeah, it's a talking point at a party, especially after a few pints. But yeah, overall, an absolutely fantastic car and well worth the money. And you know what? I think if you're not really looking for a hot hatch, I think this is a much better value proposition than the BMW M140i is. To think, you know, they're not far off in terms of price. If you're looking for a like-for-like car, that means like same year, same mileage, you're talking like 4 or 5 grand. And when you consider you could get something that's got a sound system as good as this, it's got adaptive cruise control, air suspension, it's comfortable, it's got more space, a bigger boot. Yeah, I think it's a very good value for money car, and one that's really underrated actually, especially when you consider it's got xDrive and, you still fairly good fuel economy around town, and it's still blisteringly fast. You still get the B58 engine at the end of the day. It's a very good value car. Anyway, as always, if you enjoy this content, please give it a like, and why not subscribe, as not only can you see more content like this, you can see everything we have for sale. My name's Tom, and you've been watching Paragon Cars. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.